Welcome from the IIBA Tampa Bay, Florida chapter. This is our study group for August 31st, the last one of this year for August. This is our 89th study group. Today we're going to be talking about the techniques of prototyping and reviews. Our mission here at the IIBA Tampa Bay is to bridge the gap between industry leaders and business analysts by building partnerships with professionals, educators, and employers so that we may empower, instruct, and engage the BA community. We've given you a variety of ways to reach us. This is our normal Thursday night study group. We meet from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. In case you're not watching us live, you can watch our past meeting recordings here at this address. Cliff will drop that into the chat. We also have an IIBA website, Meetup, Zoom, Facebook, and LinkedIn groups. So we've given you a variety of ways to reach out to us. Watermark Learning has been our constant supporter. They've given us a discount code on their products. They have products that are not only business analysis related, but a couple of other topics. If you would like to purchase one of their products, they have flashcards, practice test questions, and classes, and a few other things for those different topics. Their discount code is Tampa 21, which will give you a 20% discount. We are a volunteer-led organization. Cliff is our president. You'll see him here in the Millennium Falcon. Yulia is our vice president of finance. Caitlin and Priscilla are board members at large. My name is Thea Soehren. I'm the vice president of career and professional development for the organization. And we are looking for you. We need a couple more board members. We've had people that have been on our board for literally years. They need a break. And so if you have something you would like to do, we can give you just a single job, or we can give you a position, whichever you prefer. But we need you. Reach out to me through LinkedIn. Again, my name is Thea Soehren, and we will get you set up. We have the privilege of having study group advisors. Bob Churchill, you'll see him here. He's actually on a road trip, and he stopped to join us. His CBAP certification means that his participation in our meeting gives us an education credit, which means that whenever you go to apply for your certification test, that you have a number of education credits required to be able to apply. Thank you, Bob, for joining us. Usually we have also Yulia joining us, but she isn't available tonight. We do have a variety of people that have joined us over the past, either in person or via the recordings. If you are joining us via recording, reach out and let us know. These are folks that I have listed here on the page that have passed their certification tests and have told us that our organization, our study groups were instrumental in them being able to pass. So we are excited about that because we put a lot of work into this. As you know, this is our 89th class. Tonight, we are going to be studying prototyping and reviews. If you are interested in presenting one of the techniques, let me know. Tonight, I will be presenting the techniques. This is straight out of the BABOK. The BABOK is the book of knowledge for the business analyst, analysis book of knowledge, provided by the International Institute of Business Analysis. They are a governing body. For you to pass the test, you need to have this information. So we're going to talk about prototyping. Prototyping is used to elicit and validate stakeholder needs through an iterative, I'm not going to say it right, process that creates a model or design of requirements. It's used to optimize user experience, to evaluate design options, and as a basis for development for the final business solution. This is a proven method, and there's a variety of things that you can do to create prototyping. As I go into this, Bob, this seems very familiar. Are you sure we haven't done this before in this series?
I think I actually was preparing to do this and have written not one but two blog posts on it. Okay. Because I'm a airhead, I think.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and go through this. Prototyping can be non-working models, digital depictions. It can be on a piece of paper. It can be something that you create on your on your PowerPoint, whatever you need, so that people can get an idea of what works and what doesn't. It just gives something interactive that you can work through with your clients. And we'll go through some examples of prototyping here in a minute. Some of the prototyping approaches, throwaway, it's called back of the napkin prototyping. You know, you're sitting there and you're talking about it and you say, well, what if the screen looked like this? What if you had a banner here and if you had a menu over here and you had what you want here? Does this look like what you're looking for? And they say yes, and you have a prototype to take back to your developers to get started. This does not become workable code. It is not something that you're going to end up with. It's just a beginning. Evolutionary or functional prototypes are created to extend initial requirements into functioning solutions, so that you start out with a working solution, a proof of concept, and you use a prototyping tool or language, and this may turn into the final solution. Examples, proof of concept or proof of principle. I've seen proof of concept called POCs. People say, I'm going to work on a POC for this. It's a model created to validate the design of a system without modeling the appearance, materials used in the creation of work and process and workflows ultimately used by stakeholders. A form study prototype is used to explore the basic looks, size, feel of a product that will be manufactured without actually creating functionality. For instance, if you say you wanted to have a backpack that would work for electrical work, you could say, well, I want it to have start out with a bag, and I need straps, and I need it to have a belt, and I need it to have whatever. And you just kind of put things together to see, does it work and how would it feel? And it gives you a high order of understanding of what the form needs to be to get that, as well as, oh no, that's not going to work that way. Usability prototypes is a prototype model created to test how the end user interacts with the system. An example of this is we used screens that I created out of PowerPoint and said, okay, the next screen you'd have to identify which blood type it is. And, we literally put it on a 3-ring binder and hung it over their monitor where their monitor was going to be, and mash the button. And then when they mashed the button, we would turn the page to the next page, and they would be able to do the next thing in their process. It allowed us to identify where the buttons, this button is mashed all the time. It needs to be a lot closer so that they don't lean forward. A visual prototype, very similar to what I just talked about, is created to test the visual aspects of the solution without modeling the complete functionality. What do you want it to look like? The functional prototype, a model to test the software functionality and workflow. It also referred to as a working model, and is used to simulate business processes and business rules to evaluate software function calls. So the one I just described was all 3 of these. Any questions so far? Okay, prototyping methods. These are commonly used methods. There are other methods. Storyboarding, used to visually and textually detail a sequence of activities. Since this book was written, we now call it the user experience. We walk through how the user actually uses something. What is their perception when they walk in? What do they see first? What do they choose? If they pick it up, how does it feel? If they have to customize it, what is the process for customizing it? You walk through literally what their experience is. Paper prototyping uses pencils and paper to draft an interface or process, similar to what I explained earlier. Workflow modeling is a sequence of operations that are performed, usually focuses solely on the human aspect. Whenever you're talking about workflow modeling, this can also be used whenever you're talking about a swim lane diagram, and you're talking about this person does this, then they hand it off to this other person. This person does these 3 things. there's a decision here, and you talk about how that process is going to happen with the workflow. A simulation is used to demonstrate solutions or components of a solution, and it may test various processes, scenarios, business rules, data, and inputs. Bob, you've worked a lot with simulations. Would you like to talk about that for a few minutes?
Well, I can. I want to point out that, in fact, we have covered prototyping this cycle already. So there's already a recording of it.
Okay.
But as far as simulations go, they're made for many different reasons. They're made for operator training. They're made for design and sizing. They're made for seeing if something will work at all. So they're used for optimization. They're used for economic analysis. They're used for a lot of different things. And they're also used to model things that it would be unsafe to do in the real world. For example, melting down the core of a nuclear power plant, that would be bad to actually do. But if you have a good enough simulation, you can understand all the interactions that go on in a plant, which is itself a very complicated system of systems, and know how to deal with it, how to recognize the signs, how to operate it under normal and abnormal circumstances, and so on. So simulations can be used for a lot of things. Also, a big thing BAs will simulate is UIs. There are tons of tools for doing that. You can do it in Visio, has a library of standard UI elements. You can do it in a tool called Balsamic. The chapter had a workshop on that live in Tampa about maybe 4 years ago. And you can actually use a standard interface building tool. So I actually used Borland C++ builder to mock up a bunch of UI screens they later built in a totally separate language. So there's a lot of ways you can do stuff like that.
I agree. Oh, before we get to the usage considerations, I want to give a warning. If you create something, say there's a 4-screen series that we needed to build, and so I mocked it up in PowerPoint, and I just set it up so that whenever you click on this button, it goes to this, and when you click on this other button, it goes to this, and basically simulated the entire system. Unfortunately, the folks that were looking at it thought that we had done all the coding because it looked good and it performed the way they expected and it gave them the results they wanted. And it was harder to explain that we had not done the coding even after they were satisfied with the design than it would have been if I had made it on pieces of paper so they could just show us. So I put a lot of effort into it and it looked really good, but it caused more problems than it was worth to make it look that good.
Yeah, when you show people your work, they may have totally unexpected responses. We built a 3D model of a border crossing for a physical verification of it, that was normally our simulations of border crossings weren't 2D, they were flat from a top view. And we made a 3D one using the same simulation engine, but a different visualization on top of it. And the team actually put some random houses around the port. And one of the residents from that neighborhood pointed to one of the houses and said, "My house is right there. That's the wrong color." And she wouldn't get off it. So you have no idea what people will get confused by, think it's important versus what's really important and so on.
Right.
Expect the unexpected.
Right. Well, I guess the big takeaway for me was if you do something fancy and you put a lot of effort into it, they're going to expect that same thing every single time. If you make it look really authentic and like it could be real, they might expect that it's already done. And so you have to say, no, it's not going to be ready for 6 months, instead of, oh yeah, it's going to roll out tomorrow. There are some of those situations you want to avoid more than you want to put it in a whole lot of effort.
I've seen that with like wireframing. Some people are so good with it. And especially, when you go from one screen to another screen and they actually have workable buttons on their wireframe. You show that to a client and they're like, oh, damn, you've already done all this. And there's no back end to it at all. It just looks pretty. And yeah, you have to be careful sometimes.
Yeah. Apparently I have a wireframe gift, but it doesn't give any back end, so it's not worth it. Okay, the strengths of this: it provides a visual representation of future state. Allows for stakeholders to provide input and feedback early in the design process, which is invaluable because that way the developers and UX and those folks get to get really good ideas of what the final design needs to be up front instead of halfway through when they have to rip things out. When using a throwaway or paper prototype methods, users may feel more comfortable in being critical of the mock-up because it's not polished and release ready. It's good that they're critical. It took Agile to teach us. It's good for them to say, that's not what I was looking for. But now that we have it, we can give them what they're looking for and they'll be satisfied for the long term. And a narrow yet deep vertical prototype can be used for technical feasibility studies, proof of concept efforts, or to uncover technology and process gaps. Limitations: if the system or process is highly complex, the prototyping process may become bogged down with the discussions of how rather than what, which can make the process take considerable time, effort, and facilitation skill. Underlying technology may need to be understood or assumed in order to initiate prototyping. If the prototype is deeply elaborate and detailed, stakeholders may develop unrealistic expectations of the final solution. These can range from assumed completion dates to higher expectations of performance, reliability, and usability. So don't prototype more than you can develop. And stakeholders may focus on the design specifications of a solution rather than the requirements of that any solution must address. You don't want them to say, I need a pink banner whenever they need the catalog. Developers may believe that they must provide the user interface that precisely matches the prototype, which is not the purpose of the prototype. Even if more elegant technology and interface approaches exist, always allow your developers the honor of them figuring out how to achieve the goal. Don't make your prototype so fleshed out so that the developers have to follow your prototype. Make your prototype inform them as to what needs to be accomplished and let them figure out how to do it. Very often your developers will have a better idea of how to accomplish something than you ever came up with because they know their stuff. Any questions about prototyping? Yes, Bob.
You can check out what we've done on my listing page on my website.
I did, and it doesn't have anything for prototype right here.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
At the bottom, number 36.
Let me refresh. Maybe it's been updated since I refreshed last. There it
Oh,
is.
look at that.
I
You snuck
hadn't
it in on you.
refreshed lately. Thank you so much. Okay, reviews. We're going to talk about reviews. Well, that's not what I wanted to talk about, is it? Let me get to the right place. We're going to go right here, reviews. Reviews is used to evaluate the content of a work product. And we don't call these reviews in any job I've ever had. We call these unit testing, or we call these peer review. We'll call these team review. We call these UAT. We have a lot of different names for these, but each is tailored to meet the need of the organization and business analysts, and they use 3 dimensions. You have to identify the purpose of the review. You need to have techniques that are either formal or informal, a way to perform the review, and the participants should be identified as to who should participate in this. So each review is focused on a specific work product, not the skills or actions of the participants. So for instance, UAT, you're focused on, can you accomplish these 16 tasks with the new development that we just released into this environment? We're not criticizing the skills of the developers that did it. We're not criticizing how they did it. We just want to know, can you get this done? It may be a package of several deliverables, a single deliverable, a portion of a deliverable, or a work in process. Or for a completed work product, the objective of the review is usually to remove defects or inform the reviewers about the content. One of the good things about UAT testing, UA, user acceptance testing, is that it not only allows the people who had some input as to what the design should be to get in there and say, yes, that is what I wanted, and I can do it, but it also provides them training that they didn't know they were getting. So they become trained as to how to do the things that was important to them. You know, they wanted to be able to perform a search. They wanted to be able to save a query. They wanted to be able to input a new order. And so it provides that training. And if you design your UAT well, you can use that same documentation of how to perform the steps for training for other users. But you're testing that as well whenever you're going through this review. For a work in process, the review may be conducted to resolve an issue or question. Each review includes the business analysis as a participant. Reviewers may be peers, especially for work in process, or stakeholders who validate that the work in process is complete and correct. The review steps depend upon the techniques used. Reviews can include an overview of the work product and review objectives, checklists and reference materials that can be used by the reviewers, reviewing the work product and documenting the findings, and verifying any rework. One of the things that I found is very useful whenever we do reviews is I need feedback. I want you to tell me, were you able to accomplish it? And additionally, is it what you expected? Or was it more difficult? Or what other result did you receive? And if they received other results, I want screenshots of what results they received. Yes, Bob. Okay. Okay. Feedback from reviewers is the business analyst updates the work product. So the objectives are clearly communicated to all participants prior to the review. So have be ready to explain, thank you for coming. This is what we want to accomplish today. if you look at the page in front of you, these are the steps that you'll take. Please follow the steps exactly in the order that you're given. And if you get any results different than what it's listed, do screenshots and save it in the Word document that's open on your screen. The objectives may include one or more goals, for example, to remove defects, ensure conformance to specifications or standards, ensure the work product is complete and correct, establish consensus on approach or solution, answer a question, resolve an issue, explore alternatives, educate reviewers about a work product, and to measure the work product quality. Your techniques, reviews can be formal or informal. The techniques used during a review are selected to support the object of the review. As I talked several times about user acceptance testing, there's peer reviews, there are a variety of other reviews. Before I go on, does anyone have any reviews that I haven't mentioned? Or have you found any reviews to be spectacularly helpful? Okay. Let's see. Techniques commonly used by business analysts. Inspection. It's a formal technique that includes an overview of the work product, individual review, logging defects, the team consolidation of defects, follow-up to ensure changes were made. The focus is to remove defects and create a high-quality work product. While usually performed by peers, it can also be used for stakeholder reviews, which is what I've been talking about. A formal walkthrough, also known as a team review. We typically have a formal walkthrough after every iteration, whenever people talk about what they got accomplished during that sprint. The developer will walk through all of the development that they did and where they put things, what it was used for, and be able to answer questions about it. A single issue review, very similar, is a technical review, typically performed by the architect or the development lead with the developer to go through and be sure that their code is up to snuff. An informal walkthrough is a technique which the business analyst runs through the work product in its draft state and solicits feedback. I often will take something to the product owner and say, this is what we're working on, and I just want to be sure that this meets your expectations. Whenever you are working in a very specific environment and things are very regulated, you know exactly what you're going for. Whenever you're super agile and it's like, oh, I just want to have some buttons to select one of these three things, it may not be so specific, and so you need to take it back to the people that are making the decisions of, is it good enough, and say, this is what we're working on, what do you think? And they can say, I think the buttons need to be a little bit larger because of our demographic are over 65, so we need to make it where they can see it. It just gives them a chance to give us feedback, and so we can make changes before we get too deep into the development. A desk check, an informal technique in which the reviewer who has not been involved with the creation of the work product provides verbal or written feedback. Hey, John, you're in a different department. Would you look at this and tell me, would you buy this? They have no preconceived ideas about it, but they just say, yeah, I'd probably buy it. How much is it? Oh, that's kind of a lot. What if I could buy half of one? How much would that be? And then a pass around, an informal technique in which multiple reviewers provide verbal or written feedback. The work product may be reviewed in a common copy of the work product and passed from one person to the next. And then ad hoc is an informal technique in which the business analyst seeks informal reviews or assistance from a peer, which is kind of like the desk check. Any questions so far? Okay. Participant roles involved in any particular review depend upon the objectives of the review, the selected technique, and any organizational standards that may be in place. In some situations, a supervisor or manager may be one of the reviewers because of their expertise. In these situations, the moderator is careful to avoid adversely affecting the level of candor or honesty of other participants or inappropriately affecting decisions of the team. You want to be sure that there's no one in the room that's going to shut everybody down, either by their words, actions, attitudes, or even their position in the organization. So you have a couple of different roles in a review. The author, it could be the author of the work product. They are there to answer questions about the work product and listen to suggestions and comments. It is their job to incorporate changes into the work product after the review. The reviewer could be a peer or a stakeholder. They examine the work product according to the review objectives. For all defect detection reviews, the reviewer examines the work product prior to the review session and then keeps track of both defects found and suggestions for improvement. They may also do a re-review after those defects are addressed. A facilitator is a neutral facilitator, should not be the author in order to avoid compromising the review. And they facilitate the review session, keeps participants focused on the objectives of the review, and ensures that each relevant section of the work product is covered. They validate the reviewers have examined the work product before the session begins and ensure that all reviewers participate in the review session. It's really important as a facilitator that you kind of look to see who's answering the questions, and you also look to see who's not answering the questions, and encourage those who are not answering to participate in some way, provided either written, verbally, through some kind of polling method. There's lots of electronic polling methods that are anonymous that you can use. SurveyMonkey comes to mind. And then the scribe is a neutral participant with strong communication skills. With Teams now, we have the ability to do a transcription and recording of all of our meetings. I would encourage you to also have someone who is a human being doing some of your note taking as well, because the transcription with Teams and some of the other applications is a little bit funky. It will transcribe things that weren't quite said that way, and so you can't rely on it to be 100%. But the scribe's job is to document all defects, suggestions, comments, issues, concerns, and outstanding questions that are raised during the review session. If they have familiarity with the subject matter, it is a whole lot easier for them to capture the item clearly. It is very, very, very difficult for someone who does not understand the development, the process, the project, the acronyms, to try to scribe for one of those situations that's outside of their understanding. They can write down what they hear. They don't know which parts are important. They don't know the underlying formation of that project. So please choose someone who understands the subject matter to do the scribing. And usage considerations. You can help identify defects early in the works product lifecycle, eliminating the need for expensive removal of defects discovered later in the life cycle. All parties involved in a review become engaged in the final outcome. They become emotionally engaged in the final outcome. They have vested interest in the quality results. So it's important that you introduce it in a way that says, we need your input to make this the very best it can be. And without your input, it's not going to be. So I need to hear from each one of you. Desk checks and pass-around reviews can be performed by a reviewer at a convenient time instead of on my schedule. It can be on their schedule, rather than interrupting work in progress to attend a meeting. And then limitations. Rigorous team reviews take time and effort. Thus, only most critical work products might be reviewed using inspection or formal walkthrough techniques. Informal reviews by one or more reviewers are practical in terms of the effort required, but they provide less assurance of removing all significant defects than using larger teams and more formal processes. Let me remind us all that the more people we have in a meeting, the more expensive the meeting is. And so to be aware of that, you need to determine how valuable is it to have this review, and how much money, what kind of return on investment are you going to get. For desk checks and pass around, it may be difficult for the author to validate in an independent review that an independent review was done by each participant. If you don't ask them to fill out a grid or something like that, you're not quite sure if they actually did it. And if review comments are shared and discussed via email, there may be many messages to process, which makes it difficult for the author to resolve disagreements or differences or in suggested changes. I would suggest that if you're going to have a review that's shared, don't do it by email, do it in a Teams chat so that everyone can keep everything in one thread. That's all I have about reviews. Do you have anything?
Recently,
Yes.
very recently, we were going live with ServiceNow. In fact, we just went live a couple weeks ago, and they did a UAT. And what they did is they set up a SharePoint site where everyone could actually go in and log it, so everyone could see it and they could see the progress as well,
Right.
for the possible defect or user error or whatever. So I thought that was a really good idea.
That is. Were they able to track what people did in that? Did it record it or anything like that?
No, it didn't record it.
Okay. If you've ever called someplace and they say this call will be recorded for quality assurance, that is a form of creating a review. And so whenever you have users that are testing, if you can record their screens during the test, it's a really great way to see what is it they actually do. And if there is a defect, you've got it recorded. And so you can see what steps did they take. And there is an ability in some applications, some development, that whenever you click a button, it turns the button another color. So even if they're moving really fast with their mouse, and usually if it's new to them, they're not going to be able to move that fast. But just in case, if they move fast, you can see exactly what they do and watch the log on it. A lot of applications will have logging that will show you what is happening behind the scenes, but you want to see what they're doing on the front end as well.
Boy, that'd be great. And then it creates a file that then you could use and attach it to, even if it's an email.
Right.
Oh, boy,
you can always have people doing UAT to create a Teams meeting and start a recording and then do it. Share the screen and go. And that way you have a recording for each person that was in it. It's even better if they will invite you to the meeting. That way you don't have to get permission to access the recording.
that's a good idea.
That's different. Like in Jira, what we'll do is have acceptance testing, and the QA people can use that.
Mm-hmm.
And do they
verify.
record it then? I'm not that familiar with
No,
Jira.
no,
We're going that way.
no, they do.
Okay. Huh. That Teams.
There are several QA applications that will record your screen as you go, but not everyone has access to them. So almost everyone has access to Teams. Okay.
I've been in a situation in which, well, we use several methods, right? And it depends on the type of testing and the process. We also use Qmetry, which actually it's like a bot doing all the testing. Basically, you would upload the test script and the bot does the testing. But and I've been in a few, but one thing I normally like dictate, like we need to be screenshotting every single thing, right? And it's on the twofold, because on the back end it's your evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But in instancing it, like right now we're doing an integration NS2, and that's one of the big thing. And I was recently a year or so and CM2, in which it's the same thing, especially dealing with outside vendor, SaaS platform. They want to see as much evidence as possible because they have to trace it back. So,
Right.
I've used ALM. We're not using that right now, What, in fact, with this integration, I'm actually using a spreadsheet to track everything basically, but we're also keeping the screenshots, and that's a constant. You'll find that the vendor, whomever, they want to see the evidence, especially when there's a defect, as much as possible, so they could actually whether rebuild it or
Right.
you know. So that's one of the key things I would say. Make sure you have the screenshot, the evidence.
Okay. Well, if you will record your screen as you work, you can always take screenshots from that if they want shots, but it also gives it to you. You can watch the time, you can move forward or backward, you can do all kinds of things on those. Maybe it will be helpful. Anybody else? Yes, Bob.
One thing in general, that reviews is a very general concept. And it really applies at any time or any place in the engagement, in any of the work you do with any other participants. So if you're familiar with Scrum, there are 2 or 3 different ceremonies which are review, right? There are the sprint retrospective and then the internal team retrospective. And those are reviews of the work that or the deliverable by the customer, and one is a review of the team's working methods. There's also when you do bidding on how much effort user stories are going to take, that discussion and resolution process is a form of review. Documents are reviewed. If you look at, if you're familiar with my 6-loop iterative model of doing business analysis, iterating within each loop is a series of reviews to get everybody on the same sheet of music. And the nature of the review will depend on the phase you're in, the work product, and so on. So although they put it in the BABOK, it really is everywhere. You should understand what the BABOK says, so you get the test questions right, but it's really a totally general concept that involves communication. It overlaps with workshops, document reviews, or document analysis, potentially focus groups, and almost anything else. So just be aware of all that.
Absolutely. Anything else on reviews? Okay, we're going to go on a little tangent here. There is something in Agile, and Bob made me think of this. Whenever you're reviewing a story to size it, there's a thing called Fire Poker, and this is an app online that you can use, and it is one of the most effective ways to get people to tell you how complex, how much time, and how much risk that story has. And the reason why, let me just hit play now here. Let me do this real quick. Create game. Okay. I'm sorry, this is not taking me exactly where I wanted to go. Well, okay. Maybe one of y'all can give me the right link. But what it does is it gives you the ability to choose one of the numbers and to choose the size of a story. If you use a Fibonacci sequence, you can select that. If you choose, 1 through 10, however you choose it. You choose the size of a story. But the glorious thing of it is until everyone in the team that's signed in identifies their choice, you don't see anyone else's numbers. And then whenever the last person puts in their estimate, it will flip it over and you can see who voted for what. And that makes some people kind of cringe. It's like, well, I'm the only one who voted 13. Well, then you have a chance to say, I voted 13 because I think it's complex, because I had this experience with another project, and here's information that y'all might not know. Or I voted that it's a 3, and because I know that this has already been done, and it allows you to convey information that the team doesn't have. But it's a different kind of review because you're able to bring forth information that you wouldn't get any other way. So fire poker is effective because it doesn't use peer pressure. It doesn't say the person with the loudest voice always gets to pick, and that everybody else kind of stops listening. And it doesn't say somebody says it's a 3 and then everybody else says, okay, it's a 3. This way, everyone has a voice that can be heard, and you have the opportunity to talk about why you think it is what it is. And then you can replay, and everybody comes up with something closer. And you need to come up with an agreement as a team that as long as we're within 2 of each other or whatever, we're going to go with the average, or we're going to go with the highest, or we're going to go with what. But it's the people that are outliers that are not, everybody else picks a 5, but there's an 8 and a 3. So what's the difference? If the people that pick the 8 and the 3 are the people doing the work, you really need to listen to them. Your QA person, your devs that are actually doing the work, they should have the biggest voice. But everyone does have a voice, and it gives you the opportunity to bring your knowledge forth. Has anyone played fire poker?
No, but actually that sounds great, because just like you said, it's the outliers on a result like this that you would be going after. Or
Yeah.
I don't even mean it that way, but I mean,
No, you want to
explain,
hear from them.
because so often, I'll be in a group and it's like, yeah, that might take us a couple hours. That might take us a couple hours. But the guys who really explain or understand the work, it's like, hell no, that's going to take a couple days.
Yeah.
And explain why. So yeah, no, that's a cool. I've never seen that before.
I will.
And it's kind of random before.
I will
Yeah.
post it on LinkedIn whenever I get the right link. This is the right logo, but it's not the right link for me. Yes, Bob.
They also make physical cards with the numbers on that allow you to do your bids in person.
If you're in person, you can use the deck of cards, and it's called fire
Or
poker there
you
too.
can use them even remotely like this with your cameras on.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. The other option is, instead of using the app, everybody puts their number, their Fibonacci sequence, or whatever number you're going to use in the chat at the same time. But the problem is there's always going to be the first person. And if the first person is influential, the other people are going to possibly change what they were going to put in. And that's a problem, because you don't want this to be peer pressure. You don't want this to be blindly leading or blindly following. You want everyone to have a voice. Okay, so there's fire poker. The next thing I want to cover is, I've got 2 books that, if you have not read these books, I highly encourage you to read them. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. This guy, I don't know where he came from, but Patrick Lencioni has put out a whole bunch of really good books. And the 5 Dysfunctions of the Team is the first book that ever made me realize that disagreeing with somebody and conflict were a good thing. I had this belief that, oh no, we're all supposed to get along, but the problem is if you're always getting along, all of you aren't needed. It's those of you who bring in new information that make it valuable. This also allows you to do something called build trust. People that trust each other will work together a whole lot better. And the only way to build trust is if you share some common experiences. So it teaches you how to create common experiences, how to build trust, and then go through what to reduce the dysfunctions. And I tell you, this book personally challenged me to get better. The next book, and I'm going to ask y'all.
This is like, I think that's really interesting, because I found over the years that it's hard to challenge people at work if they're really not intelligent. Because if they're not intelligent, then they just get defensive right away.
True. That's true. And this series, there's the 5 dysfunctions of the team, and then there's, I think, the coach facilitator guide set. There's additional books, but there's this one, and I would encourage you to look at this, and then look at the other books that he wrote. I think he's written about 12 books, and he is phenomenal. It's Patrick Lencioni, Lencioni. Good stuff. The next book, and I'm going to ask y'all to share your favorite books that everyone should read too. So get them ready for me. The next book is Joy Inc. Joy Inc. is talking about a real place. This is a real company that's, I think it's in Portland. Richard Sheridan wrote this book, and he talked about he worked his way up from, high school doing development. He got his first job as a developer. He worked his way up. He was a vice president. He hated going to work. He would take the longest route he could to get to work, because work was so miserable, because there were some things that happened, like the salesman would promise that we could do something in 6 months, and there's no way we could do it in 6 months. And so we tell the developers that they have to work weekends, and it was just a bad system. Joy Inc. solved a lot of those problems. He started a new company, and he says, okay, we're going to do this better. And they didn't do everything better to start with. They had to make some course corrections. But one of the things that they did, and there's a lot of things that they did in this, but one of the things that they did is whenever they estimated a story, they used, I think it was 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. And that was 1 day of work for one person. And they knew that they had 8 days of work. So they had 8 days for the sprint. And so, if something was half a day, they folded a piece of paper in half and they wrote what it was on it. If it was a quarter a day, they folded it in quarters. But it was easy to visually see their work took 8 days. If you wanted to add something to their work, you had to tell them what to take off the board. You couldn't just add something to their load because it was visual. It was easy to see whenever they were having problems. It was easy to see whenever they had defects. They have stand-up every morning. I think they said it's 60 people. They have stand-up in 15 minutes. And they literally have it's a hat with 2 horns, and they do pair programming. So each developer that's working together, they're each holding the horn, and they give the update on their story, and they hand it off, and it goes around, and they get it done fast. Whenever they need a team meeting, somebody stands up and they say, hey, Menlo, and everybody stops what they're doing. The person says what they need. Everybody hears it. Everybody goes back to work. You don't have to spend 30 minutes trying to figure out how to get the people into the right room, and they just do it. There are so many good things in this story, and it's a real story that actually happened. They talk about having interns. They talk about tests that they ran. They talk about tests that they ran that failed, but it's good. And I think that we can take some of this into our current work, even if it's just a couple of the ideas. Does anyone else have an idea, a book that you think that everybody should read? No? Okay.
I wish I could add to that, but I'm not a reader. Sorry.
Well, I'll tell you, I do most of this on Audible. Audible is my friend. And I have listened to this particular one read by the author over and over and over. Road trip. It's like, oh, that's cool. I can adopt that in my job.
Yeah, I read the book and I think it's quite popular, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but it was about the Toyota one, about process improvement and how they developed the Lexus line of cars. Fascinating. And how excited everyone got to meet all the requirements, and it was really a great book.
Let's see if we can find it real quick.
Yeah.
Toyota process improvement book, Toyota Kata, Toyota Way.
I think it's back in my bookcase.
It's funny though that the guy that came up with that, we kicked him out of the US and he went over there.
Yeah.
They made their
That was
stuff
stupid.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the Toyota Way. I think.
Let's see.
Well,
Toyota.
the Toyota way is what Toyota calls their overall methodology. So it's like the Oriole way for the baseball team, or the Ripken way.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
was
let's
really
see.
good.
But it's not surprising there are one or more books that talk about it.
I've heard about Toyota's process improvement strategies ever since I started looking at process improvement.
Yeah.
Before I knew that what I was doing is called business analysis, or that business analysis was a real thing. The Toyota way is awesome. So is this the book you're talking about, Sherry?
I think so. You know, it's been a few years, but
Yeah. Okay.
Lean and Six Sigma, or related to that as a total quality management and so on.
Okay.
So
All right. Very good. Okay. I'm going to challenge each of you to bring us your favorite books next time. Just be able to, put it in the chat of what the book is and who the author is and why it's good. What I've discovered is we all find these gems, these nuggets of gold, and if we can share them, we'll all be rich. Also, if you've never watched TED Talks, oh my goodness, there is such wealth there. TED Talks are fun, and there are some stinkers in it too, but go through and look at them. There's one called WikiSpeed. I encourage you to look at the TED Talk on WikiSpeed, like Wikipedia, W-I-K-I. WikiSpeed is about a gentleman who used Agile. He used a Kanban version of Agile to build a car. And it is a great story. It's a true story. And it's cool to talk about how Agile can be used for things outside of software development. If you get the concept of using Kanban for things outside of software development, I know mothers that manage their children's chores virtually using a Kanban board through an app through the summer while they're at work. And that way the kids are able to in real time say, Mom, I got this done. And, she says, send me a picture of it. And, it's a great method to do. But you wouldn't have that if you didn't know about Kanban and if you didn't have the apps. Also, I have another challenge for you. I heard about something called Works, W-O-R-K-X, I think, and it's a requirements management tool. Now, if you use a requirements management tool that is not a spreadsheet, I would like to hear your evaluation of it next week. The reason why is because too many of us are using Excel to manage our requirements, and I think there's better things out there now. And if you use something, if you have actual experience with it, I want to learn about it. So contact me through LinkedIn. We'll put together something. It might not be next week. It might be in future weeks, but let's put together some comparisons of some of the tools that we've used so that we can share that information with the whole group and raise everybody up. Okay, guys, we are at the end of our time. If you want to present a technique, contact me through LinkedIn. If you need mentoring, if you need a speaker, contact me through LinkedIn. I'll talk to you later. Bye, guys.
You guys have a good night.
bye-bye.